Amen. It's a privilege and honor to be with you all today. I've already had a great time. The beautiful choir that sung the great song, Draw the Circle Wider, blessed my heart. I'm very grateful for the hospitality shown by Allison and Reverend Kimler, and by being able to hang out with the young people. They had such great and spontaneous questions. And for your generosity, it means a lot. To stand here before you today representing the beautiful family of Common Cathedral. I also want to submit to you, I was about 4 minutes late to service because my young son Langston, he wouldn't let me go. So you should have brought him. Yeah. I should have brought him. You know, it's funny, as I heard you all sing to the children as they were going to their respective classes, I can tell that this church, this wonderful worship community, loves in a way that is intergenerational, which you don't always see, so I applaud you for the ways that you are inclusive in a beautiful community. James Baldwin says, "Love takes off the mask that we fear we cannot live without, and know we cannot live within." James Baldwin is one of the greatest American artists and writers to have graced this country. The son of a Pentecostal family, Baldwin, though he lived a secular life, maintained a sacred spiritual dance throughout his lifetime, one that helped tell the story of Black people in America. He was among the first authors to provide deep insight into the lived realities and the beautiful struggle of Black Americans, painting an intimate portrait of their humanity. Like many of his time, Baldwin was initially optimistic about the possibility of racial progress. However, over the course of his life, the persistent lack of progress, the ideological stalling of white liberals, and the unchanging material conditions of Black people sharpened his clarity about America's true nature. Dr. Eddie Glaude, in his prolific book, Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and the Urgent Lessons for Our Own, explores Baldwin's concept of the American lie. Baldwin often spoke of the American lie as the foundational myth that America tells itself, proclaiming democracy, freedom, and equality while systemically denying these very principles to Black people. In his works, speeches, and interviews, Baldwin argued that the United States built its identity on contradictions, promising liberty while upholding racial oppression, and preaching justice while maintaining systems of white supremacy. There is a myth of innocence that James Baldwin talks about in his work. Baldwin saw America as willfully blind to its history of racial and economic violence. He argued that white Americans cling to the belief that they are inherently good, and that racism is an arbitration rather than a defining feature of the nation. In The Fire Next Time, he warns that America's refusal to confront its sins will lead to its eventual downfall. He talks about the illusion of the American dream. Baldwin viewed the American dream, the white picket fence and 2.5 children, as a lie built on the exploitation of Black people. He argued that white prosperity has always depended on Black suffering. And until this truth is acknowledged, real justice will never be able to reach it. James Baldwin says, "Love takes off the mask that we fear we cannot live without, and we know we cannot live within." He talks about radical love as a reckoning. And I name radical love today, family, as a forced reckoning with the social, the political, and even theological world in which we live. Radical love is a deep personal and communal interrogation of what we think we know, a way to investigate our own epistemological ways of being, I submit to you this morning that Common Cathedral is a space where I have seen the mask that we fear we cannot live without being taken off. Being unhoused is a daily dance with death, because material, social, and emotional needs can evade you every single day. And I stand here before you to address the American lie that Baldwin speaks of, humbly submitting that our economy, our ways of being, and even our values necessitate the existence of the unhoused. The American lie tells us that our unhoused brothers and sisters are in their predicament due to their own failings. But after 3 life-transforming years at Common Cathedral, I can tell you that this is the furthest thing from the truth. The truth is we have discarded our American veterans, those who have risked their bodies and mental health to service to this nation, when it is our responsibility to provide them with holistic healing. Instead, we look the other way. I submit to you that many folks who have come here, who might be the children of immigrants who have come here and trying to make better for themselves, they find themselves in vicarious situations that there should be some type of social safety net that could support them. When they have paid their fair share of taxes, when they have been able to support our economy, they fall on hard times. We look the other way. I would submit to you that we no longer value artists as the vanguards of our society, that many of our persons who come to Common Cathedral, many of our siblings are artists themselves, that we literally have common art because there are artists not being able to make money for themselves, finding themselves in house and wanting a way to come and practice their skill. That actually birthed common art. And so we soak up all of their joy, we soak up all of their skill, we love it, we hang their pictures on our walls while they walk around unhoused. But love takes the mask that we fear we cannot live without, and no, we cannot live within. We're almost done here. My son, he's starting to speak in his own way when I go preach at spaces. In his own way, I think he suggested to me, he says, Carrington, Dada, go make your couple of points and sit down. So I'm going to make 3 points with you, and then I'm going to sit on down. Family, radical love calls us to a couple of things. Radical love, 1, calls us to reject the status quo. We reject the status quo by first asking the simple question of, what can I do? How can I play a role in the wicked world that we find ourselves in? How can I play a role with my little bit of dollars, my little bit of time, my little bit of resources? What can I do? That's the first question to unravel the status quo. And I want to submit to you, but for a moment, that the status quo, it means that certain places and certain spaces, certain people will continue to prosper, but it also means it will happen on the backs of those who are the most marginalized and oppressed. There's an interesting book by this interesting author. He calls the book called Afro-Pessimism, and his actual thesis is simply this. He simply says that the world goes round because of the oppression of black and brown people. And he literally says that if we stop oppressing black and brown people, if we stop oppressing the economically marginalized, the world itself will die. So his suggestion is we need to let the world die and make a new one. And so in this moment, I want to submit to you that you have to ask the simple question to yourself, what can you do to help remake the world? Point number 2, radical love calls us to tell the truth. Now, sometimes telling the truth is difficult because telling the truth means you might have to tell on yourself. Telling yourself about how you benefited from certain ways of being. Telling the truth about how you got an extra leg up because of certain ways of being. Telling the truth on how you might view the world because of the environment that you came from and how it could be hurtful or harmful to others. You have to tell the truth. And I want to submit to you, come to Common Cathedral, because people at Common Cathedral, my unhoused siblings, my family, there's no reason to lie. They have no reason to lie. They don't need to lie about how they got here. They don't need to lie about where they are. They don't need to lie about their economic ways of being, because it's very visible. So when you come and you visit Common Cathedral at City Reach or at Common Art, you'll know very quickly that people are in the business of telling the truth about their circumstance, telling the truth about what they need, telling the truth about how they got here, telling the truth about how our economy has exploited them in their lifetime. And so you have to learn how to tell the truth and be okay with the consequences that come. And then last but not least, it's time to go eat pancakes, family. Radical love calls us to create new systems. Family, I don't know your political affiliation, but folks now are a little scared. People a little worried about their livelihoods, worried about their families, worried about their children, worried about where the country in this moment is going. And James Baldwin, he submits to us that in his lifetime that he was optimistic about the progress that was being made, but as he saw the stalling of the white ideology of his time, he was very clear, he's very focused on what needs to happen next. I want to put some hope and some joy and some courage into your soul, but for a minute and submit to you that, yes, we might be in a difficult time, but yes, things will possibly continue to get worse, that you'll see continued privatization of wealth and of funds that will have a trickle-down effect that will not allow for the type of funding that places like Common Cathedral need. And the very marginalized will be the ones who will feel it the most. But in that moment, you can ask yourself the question, what can I do? How can I tell the truth? How can I help create new worlds? As I was sitting here looking at this beautiful history, and I was talking to Pastor Kimler. I said, how long has this church been around? I'm seeing stuff like 1835 and 1967. And there's an interesting theory that talks about how justice and social transformation works. They actually call it the 7-generation way of thinking. In other words, it submits that it takes about 150 years for real social transformation to come, which is about 7 generations. In other words, the work that you do now, the way that you invest in your young people, the decisions that you make in this moment, both theologically and economically and politically, it will have a harvest in 150 years to come. That many of us are the results of our ancestors that have come before us. I've got to tell you a quick story about my own family. The first Moore to be recorded in the census in America, his name was Uriah Moore. He was first recorded in a plantation about 1820 in Crenshaw County, Alabama. He was my great-great-great-grandfather. He would then have a son who was born in the 1840s. His name was George Shelton Moore. He would be the last Moore to be born into slavery. He found himself at a plantation, the same plantation as Uriah Moore in the 1840s. Then he had a son named Thomas Moore, who would be born right after the Civil War, the first Moore to be born out of slavery. He would find himself also at a plantation working in sharecropping in the 1870s and 80s. He would then have a son named Thomas Moore, who was born in the 1880s as well. Then he would have a son named John Wesley Moore, who was my grandfather, who was born in 1911. And because of racial terrorism, because of what we call the Great Migration that caused many African Americans to move south out to west and up north, he would find himself in Youngstown, Ohio, working at a steel mill where he would retire and lay himself to rest. And then he would have a son in 1952. My father, George Wesley Moore, would be the first Moore to go to graduate school, would be the first Moore to become a pastor. And then in 1986, the world changed. Thunderstruck. There was an earthquake in Youngstown, Ohio. And this beautiful, dashing, charismatic, charming, eloquent young man came moving into the world, who found himself in Boston, Massachusetts in 2010. And then in 2023, the world changed again. When my wife and I, Chanel, gave birth to Langston Atlas Ade Shelby Moore. From Uriah Moore to Langston Atlas Ade Shelby Moore. That's 7 generations. What Uriah did to maintain himself. In the 1820s, one who would never know freedom, his will to live, his hope to persevere, to go forward, it leaves a lasting effect for even my son Langston, that he's here today because of the work of my ancestors. I want to submit to you in this moment that the work that you do now, you might not see the progress and change in your own lifetime, but your own descendants, your name might be on the wall one day. And they'll be grateful to their ancestors because of the work that you do now. Love takes off the mask that we feel we cannot live without. We know we cannot live within. Family, Common Cathedral is deeply grateful for you. It's a place of love, it's a place of joy. Last story, and I'm going to get out your way because I can smell the pancakes. I'm a member of a lot of great communities. I had 3 knee surgeries in my lifetime. And my last knee surgery was in October 2022. And of course, my family at Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, where I'm one of the staff pastors, they reached out to me and they showed me so much love. But you know, the people, the folks, the brothers and sisters, the siblings who contacted me the most, the ones who hit me up on Facebook and Instagram, the ones who were tweeting me. I don't talk about Twitter or X anymore because of Elon Musk. Bless him too. And the ones who reached out to me the most were my unhoused siblings, making sure that I was okay. When I came back to work, I'm thinking this is going to be a regular day at the office. It was a party for me. They said, "Welcome back, Carrington. We missed you." In their own way, they showed me the most love that I'd seen in a long time. The most generous people, the bravest people, the folks with the most courage, and not the folks who have the most money, the folks who have the biggest houses and drive the best and nicest cars. But the people that I know with the most character are the ones that I spend time with every Sunday on the Boston Common, who identify as low income and unhoused. Your work, your generosity, and your love makes our church, our worship community possible. May God bless you. May God be with you. I bless you in the name of love. Amen and Ashe.